Now, I don't know who this is for today, but I do know this. Somebody listening right now has been wounded deep. Not a surface wound, not something you can just shake off in a day or two. I'm talking about a soul-level hurt, a betrayal, a disappointment, a heartbreak that tried to destroy the very core of who you are. You've cried silent tears when nobody was watching. You've smiled in rooms where your heart was bleeding. You've carried pain like a shadow, always with you, even in your brightest moments. But can I tell you something today? God does not ignore brokenness. God does not overlook pain. In fact, when a woman has been hurt, God doesn't step back. He steps in. He leans in closer. Because our God is not just a comforter in the chaos, He's a restorer of what was lost. And today I want to speak into your situation, not with shallow words, not with cliches, but with truth, real truth. Because there are signs. Yes, there are signs that God is not just aware of your hurt, but He's already started blessing you through it. You see, pain may have been your introduction, but it will not be your conclusion. And if you'll lean in with me, just for a few minutes, I believe you're going to hear something today that could be the very confirmation you've been crying out for. You're not crazy. You're not alone. You're not forgotten. There's movement in the heavens. There's a shift happening. And if you listen closely, you'll begin to recognize the fingerprints of God all over your healing. So don't you dare tune this out. Don't you scroll past this moment. This might just be the message your soul's been waiting for. Because when God starts blessing a woman who's been hurt, hell gets nervous and heaven gets loud. You know, when God starts blessing a woman who's been through hurt, one of the clearest signs isn't that she suddenly gets everything she prayed for. It's that she starts seeing her scars differently. Her wounds no longer speak of defeat. They start to tell a story of survival. She doesn't walk around ashamed of where she's been or what she's endured. No, she begins to walk with a holy confidence, not because everything is perfect, but because she knows God met her in the mess and didn't let her die in it. There's something powerful about a woman who has been broken and yet refuses to live as a victim. You can see it in her eyes. You can hear it in her voice. She's been to the bottom, and now she walks with a fire that wasn't there before. That fire didn't come from the pain. It came from what God did through the pain. She learned to stop asking why it happened and started trusting who carried her through it. That shift right there, that's the beginning of blessing, because God doesn't bless us by erasing our past. He blesses us by redeeming it. He takes those moments that were meant to destroy us and uses them as fuel to develop us. That's why some of the strongest women you'll ever meet are the ones who've cried in silence but still got up the next morning. They didn't give up. They didn't lose their minds. And even when they did break down behind closed doors, they found enough grace in God to pull themselves together and keep walking. That's not weakness. That's strength in its purest form. And it's not the kind of strength the world gives you. It's not about pretending you're okay. It's about knowing you're not, but trusting that God is. It's when you can stand in front of the very thing that tried to take you out and say, I'm still here, not by your own power, not because you had it all figured out, but because God held you when nobody else could. And now that same pain is becoming your platform. That wound is turning into a weapon. That scar is becoming a sign, not of what broke you, but of what God built in you. See, when God blesses a woman who's been hurt, He doesn't just patch her up and send her on her way. No, He does a deep internal reconstruction. He redefines her identity. He reshapes her confidence. He reestablishes her worth. She stops measuring her value by who left, who lied, or who let her down. She starts measuring it by the fact that the King of Kings never walked away, even when everyone else did. That realization alone becomes the foundation of her healing. And don't miss this, other people might still see her as broken. They might look at her past and whisper about her pain, but she doesn't live for their approval anymore. Because when God starts speaking into your soul, the voices of the crowd lose their power. She walks like someone who knows she's loved. She prays like someone who knows her prayers are heard. She loves again, not because she forgot the pain, but because she refuses to let the pain hold her hostage. That's blessing. That's favor. That's God showing up and saying, I'll make beauty out of those ashes. I'll turn mourning into dancing. I'll make you a witness to my healing power. And when you become a witness, you stop hiding the evidence. You let people see your scars, not to glorify the hurt, but to magnify the healer. Because a healed woman doesn't need to shout to prove her strength. Her peace is loud enough. Her patience is proof enough. Her presence carries the quiet authority of someone who walked through fire and came out refined, not burned. The enemy tried to break her, but all he did was build a stage for God's glory to be revealed in her life. So if you've been through something and you're wondering where God is in all of it, don't just look for a new door or a fresh opportunity. Look at the woman you're becoming. Look at how you no longer crumble under pressure. Look at how you speak life even when you've tasted death in your spirit. Look at how you've stopped apologizing for healing slowly. That's not just progress, that's the hand of God working, molding blessing. He didn't waste your pain. He used it to uncover your purpose. That's how you know the blessing has already begun. You know God is blessing a woman who's been hurt when her peace no longer comes from people. It comes from Him. That's when you know something supernatural is happening inside her. Because at one point she depended on others to hold her together. She looked for apologies that never came. She waited on explanations that were never given. She begged for closure that only left her more confused. And for a while she thought maybe if they just understood her pain, if they just owned what they did, maybe then she could breathe again. But something changed. It didn't happen all at once. It happened in the silence. It happened in the tears she cried when nobody was around. It happened in the moments where she had nothing left but God and found out that He was more than enough. And from that moment on, she started shifting. She stopped chasing people and started chasing His presence. She stopped replaying conversations in her mind and started rehearsing His promises. The more she leaned into God, the less she needed from everyone else. That's how peace from heaven works. It's not based on whether people are treating you right. It's not tied to whether life is going your way. No, this kind of peace is rooted in knowing who is still on the throne even when your world is upside down. It's the kind of peace that holds you steady when everything around you feels unstable. It doesn't mean she doesn't feel the pain anymore. It means the pain doesn't control her anymore. She's not numb. She's anchored. And when a woman starts walking like that, when she stops reacting to every insult, when she no longer needs to defend herself, when she can be lied on and still sleep at night, people start to notice because they remember the version of her that used to break down. They remember the version of her that used to run after people for answers, but now she's quiet, she's calm, she's focused. That's not indifference, that's divine healing. That's God guarding her heart and mind with a peace that passes understanding. She doesn't need the approval of those who broke her to feel valuable anymore. She doesn't need closure from the person who walked away to keep moving forward. That's because God gave her something they could never give her in the first place. Peace that isn't rooted in circumstances, but in truth. And that truth says she is loved, she is chosen, she is healed, and she is whole. Sometimes people will come back around just to see if she still needs them the way she used to. And they're surprised when she doesn't. Not because she's bitter, not because she's cold, but because she found something deeper. She doesn't carry around resentment, she carries around release. That's what happens when God starts blessing her. She learns how to let go. She lets go of needing an apology. She lets go of needing to be understood. She lets go of needing people to fix what only God can heal. And there's a freedom in that. Because once you stop giving people the power to decide your peace, you step into a new level of authority. You stop living on edge. You stop walking on eggshells. You stop handing your joy over to people who never valued it. You reclaim what God already gave you, and now she lives from a place of rest. Not because everything's perfect, but because she knows who's in control. And hear me when I say this. Peace is not passive. Peace is power. It's warfare in the spirit. When the enemy sends drama to distract her, but she stays still, that's power. When life tries to shake her, but her faith stays firm, that's power. When people try to trigger the old version of her, but she responds with grace, that's power. It means she's no longer living in reaction to her past, but in alignment with her purpose. So when you see a woman who used to be wrecked by heartbreak, now walking with a calm strength, don't misunderstand it. That's not just personality, that's protection. That's not just time healing her wounds. That's God building a fortress around her mind. That's what happens when peace becomes her portion. Because real peace doesn't come from what's around you, it comes from who's within you. And once she got that, she stopped needing people to fix her and started thanking God for freeing her. That's when you know the blessing is real. You can always tell when God is blessing a woman who's been hurt because there comes a point where she stops rehearsing what happened to her and starts stepping into what God wants to do through her. She's not just surviving anymore. She's moving forward. She's not stuck in bitterness, replaying the betrayal, the disappointment, the rejection over and over again. She's moving in purpose, and that shift didn't come easy. It came after some dark nights, some long battles, some prayers where she didn't even have the words to say. But somewhere along the way, God reached into the ashes of what was and began shaping a new beginning. She may not even realize it at first, but her focus starts changing. She doesn't spend her days trying to prove a point to people who hurt her. She doesn't waste her energy trying to make them regret what they did. Instead, she starts pouring that energy into something that actually matters. She starts walking with intention. Her steps have direction. Her life has meaning again. That's not coincidence. That's God realigning her with destiny. You see, when God starts blessing a woman, he doesn't just remove the pain. He redeems it. He gives her vision. And it's not a vision for revenge. It's a vision for purpose. It's a vision that pulls her out of the pit and pushes her towards something greater than what tried to break her. And the beautiful part is, the pain she went through becomes the very soil God uses to grow her calling. What the enemy meant to destroy her ends up becoming the platform God uses to elevate her. She's not talking the same. She's not thinking the same. And no, she didn't just get over it. She grew through it. She's laughing at things that would have never touched her before. Not because life is easier now, but because joy has taken root in a place deeper than pain could ever reach. And people don't always understand it. They wonder how she can smile after all she's endured. They assume she must be pretending or escaping reality. But the truth is, she's just been touched by grace. And once grace touches you, joy follows. Not the joy that depends on the day going right, or the bank account being full, or the relationship being perfect, but the joy that says, even if none of those things change, I've still got a reason to rejoice. That's the kind of joy only God can give. She doesn't need to force happiness. She doesn't need to search for a distraction. She's found a well that doesn't run dry. And you know what's even more beautiful? She carries that joy with humility. She doesn't flaunt it. She doesn't use it to make others feel less. She just lets it flow. It becomes her strength. And yet, you know what's even that? It becomes her testimony. It becomes the evidence that God is not only real, but personal. There were seasons where she couldn't imagine feeling whole again. There were nights she thought she'd never laugh from the belly, never feel light again. But now, she catches herself laughing and realizes a miracle. She experiences moments of peace in the middle of storms and whispers, this is grace. And those moments, those glimpses of joy, are not small things. They are sacred victories. And they are signs that healing is no longer a process. It's becoming her reality. And here's what's even more powerful. Her joy becomes contagious. People who come near her can feel it. Not because she's loud, not because she's putting on a show, but because something about her presence speaks peace. People start asking her, how are you so calm? Or why are you glowing lately? And she doesn't always have the words to explain it, but she knows the answer. She's not just happy. She's whole. She's not just surviving. She's singing. She's not just getting by. She's being carried. That's the blessing. That's the beauty. When God restores joy to a woman who's been wounded, it's not just for her. It spills into her home. It covers her children. It heals her conversations. It lifts the atmosphere around her. Because she's not operating out of pain anymore. She's walking in the overflow of God's goodness. And every time she smiles, every time she lifts her hands in worship, every time she chooses joy when sadness would be easier, that's proof that heaven has touched earth in her life. And make no mistake, this joy didn't come cheap. It cost her some tears. It cost her some battles nobody saw. But it was purchased by grace. And now she wears it like a crown. Not flashy, not loud, but holy. It's a joy that doesn't demand attention. It just shines quietly, consistently, powerfully. That's when you know God is blessing her, not just changing her situation, but transforming her soul.